Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Scores killed in clashes between the Syrian army and the Free Army in Aleppo. Nasrallah vows to turn Israelis' lives into hell if Lebanon is attacked. And Bahraini regime condemned after jailing prominent rights activist. Mosaic, world news from the Middle East, begins now.
The Syrian Revolution's General Commission reported clashes between the Free Army and regime forces near the military airport in the Tarab neighborhood in the city of Aleppo. The BBC correspondent in Damascus said the neighborhoods of Salah ad-Din, the Hatma Souq, and Saif al-Dawla in Aleppo are witnessing clashes between regime forces and armed opposition fighters. Videos posted by activists online showed several neighborhoods being shelled with military planes, including Tar Rifat and Jarjanaz. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said today's death toll caused by the gunfire of the government forces rose to 110.
قصف واشتباكات بين الجيش السوري الحر والقوات الحكومية.
First, there's shelling and clashes between the Free Syrian Army and government forces. Then, the scale of destruction is revealed and the death toll announced. This is the scene Syrians are living daily. Opposition sources say most of the victims are civilians, while the government says they are members of the armed groups. Damascus, where hit-and-run battles are ongoing, witnessed clashes near the Meza military district, and dozens of bodies were retrieved in the town of Khatma, in the countryside of Damascus. Opposition sources say that most mosques in the city of Idlib are now surrounded by government forces, attempting to prevent demonstrations. The town of Izaz in the countryside of Aleppo was subjected to airstrikes by military planes, and rescue operations are ongoing there as chances to find survivors are dwindling. And as opposition sources are indicating, clashes are taking place near Aleppo's airport. The official Syrian TV station announced the government forces are in control of the main road leading to the airport and have expelled the armed groups present there. Videos posted by activists online showed the government forces using military planes to shell sites controlled by the Free Syrian Army. The armed opposition said that regime forces have recently intensified the use of military planes and helicopters in an attempt to avoid direct confrontations with members of the Free Syrian Army and to limit losses among regime soldiers. Protests broke out in several Syrian cities in opposition to the Assad regime and in support of the Free Syrian Army, including Kafar Zayta, Al-Tanma and Hama, and Amuda, as regime forces continue to raid a number of cities and neighborhoods, especially those witnessing a tense security situation.
On the political front, the Russian news agency RIA Novosti reported that a Russian-sponsored meeting for the Action Group on Syria that was scheduled for today at the United Nations headquarters in New York was postponed indefinitely. The Russian delegation at the international organization issued a statement stressing the meeting was postponed due to requests by a number of the Action Group's member states. Members include ambassadors of the Security Council's permanent members and some of Syria's neighboring states.
At least one person is dead, nearly 20 others wounded as a bomb explodes during a demonstration in Pakistan. The protesters were marking International Al-Quds Day in the southern city of Karachi. Press TV correspondent says gunmen opened fire on protesters before the bomb struck. The explosion also destroyed several vehicles carrying protesters. The violence comes just one day after militants attacked a convoy of buses carrying Shia Muslims in the northwestern province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. 20 people were killed in that incident and several others injured. Attacks against Pakistani Shia Muslims have significantly increased over the past few months. The Secretary General of Hezbollah says the resistance movement will turn the lives of millions of Israelis into a living hell if Tel Aviv attacks Lebanon. Said Nasrallah gave the warning in a speech on the occasion of International Al-Quds Day. He said any military action against Lebanon will cost Israel dearly. Nasrallah added that Hezbollah's missiles are ready to strike back in self-defense. He also urged all Muslims to maintain a united front in their efforts to end the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. Let's bring in our correspondent Ali Risk from Beirut, who has been following that speech. And of course, he joins us now to shed light on this. Ali, very harsh words from Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah with regards to any possible Israeli attack, either on Iran or on Lebanon. He said, quote, the life of millions of Israelis will be turned into hell if Tel Aviv attacks Lebanon, or Iran's response to any Israeli attack will be great. What do you make of his comments?
Well, such comments on Al-Quds Day are something which we could expect from Sayyid Hassan. Usually the issue of Al-Quds Day is a speech which focuses on Israel, and as he pointed out, it so happens that this year, with the coming of Al-Quds Day, Israel has actually escalated its rhetoric against Lebanon. He himself pointed out that, and in fact, yes, there have been many Israeli officials, many Israeli generals who have spoken about threats to destroy Lebanon. Now, one interesting thing is that Sayyid Hassan attributed these harsh Israeli statements, the escalation against Iran and against Hezbollah, he attributed it to the fact that Israel now is somewhat more comfortable than it was before, for example, before or during the fall of Mubarak, because the situation in Israel is something, the situation, in Syria is satisfying the Israelis to a high extent, and so the situation in Syria specifically has encouraged the Israelis to escalate their threats on to both sides, Iran and Hezbollah, who are considered Syria's two staunch allies. So I think what he tried to say here is to tell the Israelis, regardless of what happens in Syria, regardless of the unrest, this resistance bloc, including Iran and Hezbollah, are still as strong as they always have been. And by the way, this could also be a response to other skeptics here in Lebanon or elsewhere in the Arab world who are saying that what is happening in Syria is somehow weakening both Iran and Hezbollah. So I think that this is a similar message which was conveyed by the Secretary General of the Iranian Supreme National Council, Saeed Jalili, who paid a regional tour visiting Lebanon and Syria in addition to Iraq. The main message of that visit, as many said, was to ensure and to give Israel a message that the resistance bloc is intact. Now these words from Sayyid Hassan today and his stance in general, I think attempts to send the same message as well, that this resistance bloc is intact and that Israel should also continue to be afraid and continue to be concerned regardless of what happens in Syria.
The Israeli police intensified their security procedures inside and around Al-Aqsa Mosque as thousands of Palestinians arrived to perform the last Friday prayers of the month of Ramadan.
At crossings and checkpoints, Israeli security turned back many Palestinians coming from the West Bank. Israeli occupation authorities prevent males over the age of 12 and under the age of 40 from entering Al-Aqsa Mosque to pray.
Palestinians had mixed feelings as they headed to the holy Al-Aqsa Mosque to perform the Friday prayers that precede the Eid al-Fitr feast. Palestinians felt joy and sadness at once, and especially the residents of the occupied West Bank. They came today to bid farewell to the holy Al-Aqsa Mosque that they will be deprived from seeing until next year.
For us in the West Bank, it's very sad because we have to wait an entire year to come here once.
It is a must for every human to pray at Al-Aqsa Mosque, every person, so we can support Al-Aqsa Mosque facing these conditions.
For many residents of the occupied West Bank, the facilities offered by the occupation during the holy month of Ramadan are viewed as a once-in-a-lifetime chance to visit Jerusalem and to perform prayers at the holy Al-Aqsa Mosque. For many years, the occupation's procedures prevented them from reaching Jerusalem, and for the youth, it was the first time they were able to see Al-Aqsa. However, many others who did not meet the age requirement were heartbroken.
Everywhere in the world, people don't want to get old. Here, we hope to be 40 or 50 years old. God willing, it will be easier in the future and we'll get rid of the occupation.
Despite the facilities, the occupation force's presence was visible at the entrances of Jerusalem and the gate of Al-Aqsa, where thousands of security members were deployed, implementing tight security measures. The facilities presented by the Israeli occupation to the Palestinians this year are a mere mask covering its ugly face. which is represented by a policy of harassment and Judaization and the relentless attempts to uproot Arab and Muslim history from this holy city. Al-Aqsa, that is besieged by Judaization projects, is witnessing a fierce attack by the occupation and its extensions, embodied in calls to consider its squares public areas where everyone will be allowed to enter. And a schedule would be imposed on other squares, allowing Jews to perform prayers there. Palestinians strongly reject the plan.
We reject this issue of division. We reject turning Al-Aqsa squares into public squares, and we confirm that we will not relinquish an atom of dust from Al-Aqsa.
Palestinians feel that the Israeli occupation is taking advantage of the Arab and Muslim world's preoccupation with the so-called Arab Spring to impose a different reality on the ground and to tighten its grip on Jerusalem. Elias Karam, Al Jazeera, occupied Jerusalem.
Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad considered Israel a cancerous tumor that will soon be removed. Ahmadinejad said in front of protesters who gathered at Tehran University for the Jerusalem Day speech that countries of the region will soon end the presence of the Zionist occupiers on Palestine's lands, as well as American hegemony over the world.
Ahmadinejad added that Westerners say they want a new Middle East, and we also want that. But in our Middle East, there will be no trace of Zionists.
Egyptian authorities decided to close the Rafah crossing for traffic for 5 days starting today, Friday, for the weekend and the Eid al-Fitr vacation.
An Egyptian security source announced that work will resume at the crossing on Wednesday morning, according to the new procedures. It will open for humanitarian cases or for pilgrims returning from Saudi Arabia.
Meanwhile, here at home, aides to Prime Minister Netanyahu have issued a scathing rebuke to President Shimon Peres after he said that Israel should not unilaterally strike Iran's nuclear facilities. During an interview with Channel 1 last night, Peres said that Israel cannot strike out on its own because such an action would only delay and not destroy Tehran's atomic development program. He also said that only a coordinated mission with the U.S. could be effective. Peres expressed confidence that Washington will eventually take action after the American elections more than 80 days from now. The president's remarks sparked a furious response from the prime minister's office, with one source saying that Shimon Peres has forgotten what his role is as Israel's president. The official then pointed out historical occasions allegedly illustrating Peres' poor judgment, including his opposition to the 1981 bombing of the Osirak nuclear reactor in Iraq, which was ignored by then Prime Minister Menachem Begin. Sources close to Peres today responded that the president refuses to be dragged into disgraceful mudslinging with the prime minister. They said that Peres clearly stated his position on the issue, stressing that Peres has respect for Netanyahu and will continue to work closely with him. Joining me now in the studio to discuss recent political and security developments is senior correspondent for Bloomberg News in Israel, Kalev Ben-David. Good evening, Kalev.
Pleasure to be here, Aaron.
Okay, the Prime Minister and the President are apparently very divided on the entire issue of a preemptive military strike launched by Israel unilaterally against Iran. What do you make of the current frenzy of speculation and rhetoric over such a strike?
Yes, well, on one hand, as some of the people around the Prime Minister say, this is unprecedented, the sort of public debate about really this very sensitive strategic issue. On the other hand, though, it was the Prime Minister and Defense Minister Ehud Barak who really set off this current round, giving some interviews, making comments. We've seen recent steps to improve home front defense. So the kind of genie is out of the bottle here. The debate has been made public in part by the leadership, and I expect it's only going to intensify in the coming weeks.
Do you agree with several analysts who are now commenting that the public debate seems to be centered on the assumption of when an attack will take place and not if? It has more to do with the timing than if an attack will take place.
Well, look, Israeli leaders have said repeatedly, not just the Prime Minister, that a nuclear Iran is not acceptable. I mean, that is clear. They've repeatedly said all options are on the table, meaning the military option is there, and the option of living with a nuclear Iran is not on the table, that, at least here in Israel. Plus, in the U.S., I mean, even President Obama has said that a nuclear Iran, or one that has nuclear weapons, would not be acceptable. So and Iran is showing no signs of backing down. So, I mean, there is the assumption that at some point this has to, if Iran doesn't back down, this will be an option. The timing is another issue. I mean, there's a serious debate, weeks, months, and then there are those who say, what's the rush? Let's even wait years until we see some sign that Iran is still trying to do it. But the option's on the table. I mean, I think that has to be accepted as part of this discussion.
What do you make of the argument that the Prime Minister has actually stepped up his own rhetoric in order to basically force the U.S. President to come out equivocally saying that, yes, the United States will take action or back action, become involved in some sort of an action, assuming that the sanctions fail to be effective?
You know, we've seen some comments like that coming from anonymous officials around the Prime Minister. Ambassador Oren came to the Bloomberg office in Washington and spoke kind of along similar lines. They want to see President Obama make some stronger statements to come out. So yes, I think in one hand that there is that element of it. That is a tactic, but that doesn't mean the Israeli strike option is a bluff or is not on the table now. We've also seen these civil defense measures, the new system of alerting people through their phone, the SMS systems, stepped up distribution of gas masks, the appointing of Avi Dichter, very serious security official. So it's not just all rhetoric. I mean, some of these steps seem more designed to get the Israeli public ready. So we have to assume there is some degree of seriousness. We're not talking about just another Israel bluff here.
In other news, an unknown Muslim terror group calling itself Ansar al-Quds today claimed responsibility for the firing of 2 Grad rockets at Eilat on Wednesday night. A different group, known as the Salafi Front in Sinai, already assumed credit for the rocket launching yesterday, simultaneously boasting that it is also responsible for the numerous fire bombings of the main natural gas pipeline between Egypt and Israel. Palestinians in Gaza fired 1 Qassam rocket into Israel earlier today. The missile hit an open field in the Sharha Negev Regional Council, south of Ashkelon, causing no reported injuries or damage.
International human rights organizations condemned the verdict against rights activist Nabil Rajab, who was sentenced to 3 years in prison for organizing peaceful demonstrations calling for change and democracy. The organizations viewed the verdict as an exploitation of the judicial authorities with the goal of getting rid of activists demanding democracy and called for his immediate release.
As soon
as the Bahraini authorities sentenced activist Nabil Rajab to 3 years in jail over his participation in organizing peaceful protests demanding change and democracy, the reaction of rights organizations in a number of countries started rolling in. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the International Federation for Human Rights, and the International Freedom of Expression Exchange condemned the verdict against Rajab and called on the Bahraini authorities to immediately release him. Frontline Defenders, the Palestinian Association for Human Rights, and the Arab Network for Human Rights Information also denounced the imprisonment of rights activist Nabil Rajab. They viewed the sentence as abuse of the judicial authorities with the aim of getting rid of activists calling for democracy by throwing them in prison. They also demanded his immediate release. The United States, France, Britain, and the European Union expressed concern over the verdict against Rajab. On the internal front, the Bahraini Al-Wefaq National Islamic Society confirmed in a statement that tyranny and dictatorship in Bahrain is escalating and reaching all the state's institutions and impacting its political decisions.
The opposition's stance on political prisoners is clear. We consider the political prisoners in Bahrain to be prisoners of conscience, and they must be immediately released without any preconditions. And today another verdict was issued against rights activist Nabil Rajab. We view it as an escalation and a message that they refuse to listen to the voice of the international community to release political prisoners.
وشددت الجمعية على أن الحكم في البحرين لم يتراجع عن
The society stressed that the authorities in Bahrain continue to solely hold all legislative, executive, and judicial powers. In addition, they are also breaking up civil society institutions and establishing regime-affiliated institutions that hold the traits of civil society institutions but control everything in the state. This comes amid a family and tribal rule that does not allow any popular participation. The statement added that the regime is lying and deceiving the international community as it conducts wide-scale campaigns to circumvent and bypass all popular demands. The regime, it said, is marketing fake projects to the world without making any tangible changes on the ground. Al-Wefaq Society noted that Bahrain is no longer experiencing quiet days in light of the deaths and injuries caused by the crackdown, violence, arrests, abuse, intimidation, and threats.
The Organization of Islamic Cooperation's exceptional summit concluded yesterday in Mecca. The spokesman for Algeria's Council of the Nation, Abdelkader Ben Saleh, participated in the summit. The meeting ended by confirming support for oppressed Muslim people and with calls to combat strife between Islamic teachings as well as countering terrorism and extremism. Our correspondent Al-Jalali Amari reports.
ميثاق مكة حمل رؤية موحدة في 4 قضايا يتصدرها الملف الفلسطيني.
The Mecca Charter holds a unified vision on 4 issues, most notably the Palestinian cause, as all participants collectively supported the Palestinian people as they face ongoing abuse. And here, the Algerian position confirmed that the Palestinian cause is among the priorities of the Islamic cooperation, praising Palestinian gains at UNESCO and calling for exerting all efforts to request Palestine's membership at the UN once again. In regards to the Syrian issues, leaders agreed to continue pursuing the political solution and a peaceful solution to the crisis, which would guarantee the country's unity and sovereignty during the violence. They also said they would stand by the Syrian people. In addition, they decided to suspend Syria's membership of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. Regarding Muslim issues, they followed up on the situation in Somalia and Yemen, as well as the condition of the Muslims in Myanmar. Discussing the situation in Mali was proposed by Algeria, and the issue there was brought to the leaders' attention. Algeria has also warned of the situation in Al-Sahel, where arms, crimes and terrorism are widespread. The summit adopted the Saudi suggestion to establish a dialogue centre for the different Islamic sects, which will lead to a cultural and religious dialogue that may strengthen economic and development ties.
In a statement issued by the Syrian Military Council of Damascus and its countryside, the Free Syrian Army denied responsibility for the kidnapping of Lebanese national Hassan al-Miqdad, saying the group that kidnapped him is not affiliated with the Free Syrian Army, but is a fictitious group whose members are not present in any of its units. The statement also confirmed that the kidnapping and the group involved in the abduction were fabricated by the regime in an attempt to fuel the conflict and cause strife between the Syrian and Lebanese people. In order to avert more dangerous repercussions on Lebanon's security, the government there decided to form a special commission to follow up on the issue of the kidnapped Lebanese nationals in Syria. The Lebanese government also led a national dialogue committee meeting. And while the al-Miqdad family announced the suspension of the kidnappings of Syrians as it waits for the results of efforts aimed at releasing their family member from Syria, the Lebanese are living under a tense security situation in fear of its deterioration. But there is internal and foreign consensus that the Syrian events should not be exported to Lebanon. Elian Shatri reports from Beirut.
The security situation in Lebanon retreated in favor of a political solution as security issues were discussed at length by the National Dialogue Committee and during the Parliament's last session. This comes following the deterioration of the situation that resulted from the Miqdad family's kidnapping of a Turkish citizen and a number of Syrians in response to the kidnapping of their relative in Syria. Lebanese President Michel Suleiman connected with others and led a series of meetings to follow up on the fate of the 11 kidnapped individuals in Syria. At the same time, he's attempting to free the abducted Syrians and Turkish citizens.
God willing, those kidnapped in Syria and those kidnapped in Azaz will be freed.
I want to reassure all the Lebanese and all our nationals abroad that if you'd like to come to Lebanon, I'm sure and can guarantee that the airport road won't be impacted.
On the ground, Al-Miqdad family announced it halted its kidnappings, awaiting the result of steps taken with the International Red Cross to establish contact to free their son. Meanwhile, a group calling itself Sarai rabbi Al-Mukhtar al-Thaqafi claimed responsibility for the kidnapping of Syrians, saying they're members of the Free Syrian Army and will be exchanged for the 11 Lebanese held in Syria. The fate of the 11 is still unknown. The Lebanese street is holding its breath, awaiting developments of the two issues that have once again put the security situation at the forefront.
There is internal and external motivation to maintain the tension at a level that would not lead to a wide-scale explosion in Lebanon. So we hope everyone will start playing by the rules of the game again, rules that were established as soon as the events were ignited on the Syrian scene.
Have the rules of the game been reinstated? Everyone is monitoring the developments before taking the next step. So it's a race between the security developments and the political maneuvers, all under the banner of avoiding the repercussions of the Syrian crisis in Lebanon. Will political efforts succeed at diffusing this explosive security situation?
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic. Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.